Hello, everyone. GM. Welcome back to another episode of Overpriced JPEGs and your favorite recurring segment, Moment of Zeneca. I'm here, of course, joined by Zeneca33, also Roy Basine, otherwise known as Zeneca. Roy, I always just call you Zen or Zeneca, but lovely to have you here as always.
Always a pleasure. It's been a little while. Like last time we recorded was the CC0 roundtable. That was fascinating.
Yeah, which was so fun. But it does mean that it's been a minute since you and I just shot the shit here.
Talked about the space. Yeah. Happy to be back.
So we'll do what we always do, kind of macro, what's been going on. We'll talk a little bit about this BenDAO situation that luckily crisis seems to have been averted there. Pudgy Penguins flipped World of Women, and I just want to break down my understanding of what's going on there.
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, lots of other good stuff. Proof Grails drop happened. I have some additional just hot takes on some, I don't know, IRS things that are happening. Yugo Ryder Rips lawsuit. I have a newsletter coming out today about that. So might get into some other topics as well. But before we dive in, we do need to hear a word from our lovely, lovely sponsors. And I have to ask everyone who's listening to this, if you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on a podcast app, please subscribe. And if you're listening on a podcast app, rate and review as well. It makes such a difference for us, and I really appreciate it. All right, with that, here are our sponsors. MetaMask is the leading Web3 wallet to get you access to everything you need in Web3. If you're just getting started on your NFT journey, you need MetaMask. And if you need to fund your MetaMask account in order to buy that NFT that you've been eyeing, well, now you can do that directly through MetaMask. Just click the blue buy button on the home screen. Personally, I'm mad that I've spent extra gas fees transferring money from Coinbase to MetaMask in order to buy NFTs. I've been using MetaMask directly, and it is so much better. You can also buy stable coins and native tokens from Ethereum, Polygon, Avalanche, CeeLo, and others. And you can do it directly with your debit card, your credit card, through Apple Pay or Google Pay. And there is now an improved buying experience on MetaMask Mobile. You'll only see tokens that are in your region, so it's personalized to you, and you'll get real-time quotes, so you know you're always getting the best deal. If you haven't downloaded MetaMask yet, what are you waiting for? Go try it out. You can learn more about buying cryptocurrencies with MetaMask at metamask.io/buy-crypto.
Immutable X is the layer 2 platform for crypto gaming. Immutable offers massive scalability with up to 9,000 transactions per second and instant transaction confirmation. No more gas fees, no more waiting around for your transaction to clear. Immutable's zero knowledge rollup finally unlocks the world of crypto gaming. Immutable X is the only gas-free NFT minting platform with over 26 million NFTs minted, all with zero gas fees. With the power of Immutable, gaming developers don't also need to become smart contract developers. They just need to plug in to Immutable's API and instantly start unlocking the full potential of crypto assets inside of games. This is why world-class companies and projects have decided to deploy on Immutable X, like GameStop, Ember Sword, Planet Quest, Illuvium, TikTok, and many more behind the scenes. So start building your game on Immutable X today at immutable.com.
Okay, let's start where we always do. Give us the macro update. What's happening with NFT prices? How are you feeling about everything?
I feel good. So I mean, I don't like to say we've bottomed, like no one actually knows, but we've obviously been in a bear market for ages and things were crashing, and we saw just low volumes across the board. Volume is still very much on the low end of the spectrum, but the last couple of days, I think things have been picking up, turning around, maybe 2-3 days. So we're recording this, this will come out tomorrow on the 26th anyway, but yeah, so, Bored Apes got into the 60s, 65-ish at one point. They're up to 75 again. Mutants were down at almost 10. They're at 14 and almost 15 again. A lot of things that had, oddities were down at 0.7 and they're close to 2 now. So a lot of the quote-unquote blue chips, and obviously, blue chips can still fluctuate 50, 80, 90%, but they are recovering. Yeah. And we're starting to see a bunch of older projects also come back. Obviously, Pudgy Penguins, as you mentioned, but ON1 Force, I think, is making a thing happen. And just a lot of projects from 2021 that, they haven't rocketed back up to like massive floor prices, but they had been slowly bleeding for a while. And maybe they've found some resistance and a floor where eventually you run out of sellers. And as long as there's enough people in a project that have conviction in it and the team is around doing stuff, you got to hope that people will eventually come back in and prices will go up. And we're sort of in that stage. I'll also say, though, with the merge coming up in a few weeks, there's a lot of, I'm a little surprised that, I thought we'd probably just continue to bleed leading into the merge and maybe we'll turn around again and that'll happen. there's a lot of uncertainty around that entire event, obviously, and there's just a lot of lack of awareness or information. Like people are like, what's going to happen? And proof of stake, proof of work, the two different chains. Will NFTs exist on both? Where the IP rights go? Do we have to do anything? Is there any action involved from any of us? And it's just all these questions that many people don't know the answers to. Many people don't even know to be asking these questions. And then there's a whole, is it going to be a success? What's going to happen to the price of ETH? If ETH rockets up, is that going to impact NFTs? Is it going to be a buy the news, sell the event type thing? There's so many questions and uncertainty. So I really think we'll probably just be in this holding pattern still. Like maybe we go up a little bit more and it's nice, but everyone is sort of like waiting for the merge. And then after that, it'll be like, all right, now let's see. And it could be a catalyst for a bull market. It could not be. But it's going to be interesting.
I'm so confident in the merge's success.
Yeah.
That I feel like I'm projecting my confidence onto others and assuming that that the price will fall a little bit right after the merge because if people were really uncertain if the merge was going to succeed and then it went through and it succeeded, I feel like you would see a price pump. But I think it's kind of priced in that it's going to succeed. And so I imagine we'll see like a little dip immediately after. But I think I could totally be wrong on that. And I should say that like shortly after that dip, I would expect I'm fairly expecting a price bump. I mean, macro will affect it all, but like I don't even remember if I've really talked about it on this podcast. I talked about it extensively on the Immutable X podcast I'm doing now, that one that'll be coming out next week. But like the supply demand economics that are coming wild because of the merge are so damn favorable. And I really don't have a beat on how much people understand that or not. And so like how priced in or not that is. But it's remarkable. And clearly the broader world probably doesn't fully understand it. So again, in the long term, I would expect that it does really amazing things for the price of ETH. But to your point, it's so hard to know what's going to happen in that short term there.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with all of that. I think for the most part, almost everyone I talk to and believe, like they say, okay, it's going to be a success. There's so many test runs. There's so many checks and balances.
It's been like 7 years in the making.
Exactly.
I feel like very smart devs.
If it's not a success, oh boy.
If it's not a success, yeah. I don't want to jinx anything, but
easily, in my opinion. But like you said, it's going to be the supply and demand dynamics and the deflationary aspect of just like the sell pressure that is going to be alleviated after the merge is just, I'm not sure that's priced in. I'm not sure enough people are aware of that.
Yeah. As
well as the fact that longer term, like the environmental impact is something that is not spoken about so much, but like, mainstream
I keep saying
us.
I'm going to do this, but I like actually need to. I have all these ideas around just like memes. I want to put out like funny videos because to me, we are so under talking about what a big freaking deal this is. Actually, you posted a tweet, I think that was like, what's the next meta or like what's the next topic of conversation going to be? Because we had that like CC0 period and then we had the artist royalty thing, which we might talk about because you and I haven't actually talked about it yet. And I was like, the next thing should just be all of us just bombarding people with information about the environmental impacts having gone away, because this is so big. All we've heard from the mainstream for, I feel like a year plus whatever has been the environmental concerns around crypto and NFTs. And like that's effectively going away. And the water's going to be warm now for brands who maybe were dipping their toe in, but were a little nervous about the environmental pushback, et cetera. Like it's going to be warm, but only once the paradigm has shifted in the minds of everybody. Like only once everybody knows. So we have to do the work of like explaining to people that like it's not a concern anymore, or to the extent that it's a concern, because it's not like there's no energy usage. It's a concern to the same extent that like Microsoft needs to be concerned about it, or Google needs to be concerned about it. We're no longer some sort of outlier industry. Yeah. Speaking, of course, specifically about Ethereum. So I totally agree. Let's maybe break down just real fast here, and I don't have to harp on it too much if folks already have opinions about the merge, but like I think two big pieces when we talk about the supply and demand economic thing. So you have, first of all, the amount of ETH issuance is going way down. Right now, I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but miners get X number of ETH as a reward for mining. Yeah. A day. And that's going to be like cut tremendously because the rewards to stakers are not going to be as high as the rewards to miners. So already now issuance is going down, and you have the burn mechanism with fees. So when volume gets high enough, this is where ETH becomes deflationary, because you actually are going to be burning more ETH than you're even issuing, because issuance is getting cut. And then on top of that, you do have more rewards going to stakers than are currently going to stakers. I think that's like tripling, because now all the rewards that were going to miners will now go to stakers, which should mean that more people will stake ETH than currently do. And all of that staked ETH, at least for the foreseeable future, call it next 6 to 12 months after the merge goes through, is locked in a staking contract. So you're literally taking that supply like out of the flow of Ethereum. So you're locking up a bunch of money, you're reducing the supply, you're reducing the issuance, and inherently you're now rewarding people who are long ETH in a way that miners weren't necessarily. Miners were sold a lot of the ETH that they got as a reward for mining, in part because they had to recoup the cost that they spent on energy, and also in part because they're not a miner isn't necessarily like bullish on ETH the way a staker is. Like, oh my gosh, that's such a crazy confluence of factors that are super bullish for ETH.
Yeah, that whole staking piece is super important, and something that I also think isn't spoken about enough. And it's probably not even understood that well, because staking for the last 12 to 18 months in the NFT space has become this thing that's totally separate from what ETH staking is meant to be and is going to be. And a lot of people, like, for the most part, projects are like, well, if you stake your NFT, you'll get some ERC20 token, and it's like a reward for making some gas transaction, being like, hey, I want to take it off the market and not sell. It's very pointless and very Ponzi-nomics, and there's no value to it. Kobe had a really great article, or a part of his article, about this. I think he was talking about ApeCoin and how apes are going to be able to stake their apes for ApeCoin. And he's like, well, the whole concept of staking is to lock up ETH or a currency to secure a blockchain. There is utility, and then all these other projects being co-opting the word and being like, well, we're just going to start staking and lock up your ape or lock up your whatever token and you'll be rewarded. But the locked up piece is not securing anything. It's just like this social contract where people are like, hey, we'll just lock it up and get rewarded. It just doesn't make any sense when you break it down. But ETH staking makes total sense. And you're totally right. It's going to take so much supply off the market.
Yeah, when you're an ETH staker, exactly, you're securing the network. So you're getting rewarded for the job of securing the network. We've, in the NFT community, have abstracted away the like work part, which is the securing part, and just kept the reward part. So I had Blake Finucane. I'm sorry, Blake. I struggle with your last name, but I love you. She was on the pod last week doing the recap with me. She's fantastic. If you haven't gone and listened to that episode, she's like so knowledgeable about things and just amazing. And she was talking about this concept of like staking as storytelling and being like, we can infuse staking with meaning, and highlighted 10KTF and I think Jenkins the Ballet as projects that do this, where they have you come and I think 10KTF in particular will have you come and stake your thing for like 24-hour period where you can get where you'll get a reward, you'll get something, but it's really a mechanism to bring your attention back to the project. Because okay, I want the reward, but you come back to the project and the narrative is being furthered in that moment for some reason.
I love that.
And I was like, that's really cool. Like that's applying a reason for staking other than just, we don't want you selling this so that our floor price goes up.
Yeah, we just want to take supply away from the market. No, that's a really good point. And I think Jenkins and 10KTF are really excellent examples of doing things like that. I guess on the flip side, as someone who's like, I hold tokens in both those ecosystems and many others, it does become overwhelming to sort of stay on top of all these intricate things, whereas like you got to stake and attend missions and stuff. But that doesn't mean they're bad. It just means that maybe the project is not for someone like me, and it's for someone who wants to be more involved and invested and can take part in that. And maybe people, I think it's a good thing overall. Yeah,
I agree. I think it's a way to really identify who are your most engaged community members. And fundamentally, this space is supposed to be about rewarding that community and rewarding those who are really engaged. And again, to me, it's like the opposite of why I have issues with land sales. Right, which is like you're now rewarding people who had kind of money as opposed to rewarding the people who are engaged. And so anyhow,
I just wanted to throw one more project into the ring that I think does this exceptionally well is Forgotten Runes Wizards Club, where Forgotten Runes Wizards Guild Club. Club Guild. God, I'm losing my mind. Forgotten Runes. They, since the very early days, have rewarded their active participants of the community, and I think they did something where they said any community member can go and add lore to their NFT, and like on chain, you type a backstory in, upload it, and they didn't say that you'll be rewarded for this, but then retroactively they went back and said, okay, so anyone who did that by a certain time, who took a snapshot, they got airdropped or were able to mint this NFT, and that was rarer and it had utility, and people got tremendous value out of that, and they've done many other examples and instances of rewarding the people that take part in their lore and world building and storytelling and are active members. And I think it's a really great approach.
I think I have an email in my inbox from the Forgotten Rune team or somebody being like, do you want Forgotten Runes on? And, I get a lot of inbound. And so a lot of things fall through my cracks.
Forgotten Runes Wizards cult. Sorry.
Okay.
It's not club. It's not guild. It's a cult.
It's a cult. Okay. Well, this makes me want to go see if I'm right. And if I do have that email in there, and if you're listening and you're part of the Forgotten Runes team, I'm sorry. There's a lot that I missed, but maybe I'll try and reach out and see if they're still interested.
One more tangent. I went back. I have this DM from the Cool Cats team that they sent me like in June last year, and it was like, hey, just to let you know, we're launching this project. Are you interested? And we actually had a little bit of back and forth, but I was like, I think there's too many projects launching now. I'm not like, there's like 3 cat projects. There's Gutter Cats, and I wish you the best. And yeah, I found that like 8 months later, and I was just like, probably should have taken more attention. Yeah.
It's satisfying to me. I have the reverse of that, which is like I can go back and find myself when I first launched this podcast, reaching out to like Andrew Wang and like Danny Cole and these different people, asking them to come on, and totally understandably like not getting a response. And now I look back and I've had all of them on. And so, awesome. Okay, let's talk. Well, I don't know. We referenced it. So let's talk about Pudgy Penguins. The don't call it a comeback. I've been here before, or whatever the lyric is. I mean, Pudgy Penguins is back, man. Have you followed sort of why this has happened? I think I have a general sense of it, but I don't know if you've been closely tied to anything there.
Yeah, not super closely tied. I definitely followed along. I minted Pudgy Penguins way back in the day, the eggs, and then they hatched and like I had like 20 of them. I sold most at like 0.01 or 0.02 or something, like I think a lot of people. And then they had that first like rocket in price where they went up to like 2 or 3 or 4 ETH in the summer of last year, based on the back of, I think like there was a New Yorker article, a New York Times article written about them, New York Times, and a bunch of like Twitter influencers and people, I think specifically a lot of people that were not traditionally in the NFT space, but like maybe like crypto Twitter and that side of the space got behind the Pudgy Penguins. They're cute, they're very memeable. So they rocketed off, and I had a few and sort of followed along. And then there was a lot of drama revolving the leadership, with Cole being involved, and how they basically just siphoned money away from the community. They did the Little Penguins drop, and it just got split up between the founders and didn't go back to the community, and all sorts of bad stuff. And the community was like revolting. And there was, I think, one community member in particular, 9x9x9, who owns like a ton of them, like 100, 200, I think. And he was in talks with the leadership team, trying to sort of take over the project and buy it from them, saying, hey, I have a vision and a direction, willing to offer, what do you have in your treasury and stuff like that. And they're like, well, we don't have anything in our treasury. We've taken it all. And then he went public and sort of shared those DMs, and that blew up the project, and I think caused the price to crash a bunch. And then eventually it led to, the project did get sold to Luca Schnelzer. Speaking of,
I'm sorry,
bad names. We're sorry, Luca S. And apparently that, he picked it up for 750 ETH, or 2.5 million at the time in April. Yeah. And it's sort of just been this comeback story ever since then, where the community, they always had, I think, a really strong, passionate community. I think there was even an instance where Vincent Van Doe, perhaps, who is like a big collector in the space and a fan of CC0 rights and stuff like that, created a contract where people could wrap their Pudgy Penguins and trade them on a marketplace, or in a way that did not give royalties back to the original founding team. I can't remember if that actually happened or was just an idea, but it was certainly something that was floated around. Anyway, eventually it got sold, and since then it's just been, they've made really good decisions, and just everyone loves a comeback story. So in this bear market, they have just flown to new heights, and then there was a 400 ETH sale just a few days ago for a left-facing Pudgy Penguin, which I think is awesome. And yeah, just that's them. They flipped Cool Cats and they flipped World of Women, and they're like 3 to 4 ETH now.
Yeah, I think when this all was first going down, it to me felt like such a cautionary tale to young people of prioritizing or against prioritizing short-term gains. Like I was looking at Coltherium, who I think is like 20. Like this
Something
kid is
like
so
that.
young,
Yeah.
and clearly has made himself a millionaire off of this thing. And I'm just thinking, but he was, he had a lot of influence. He was featured in the New York Times. Like I'm thinking, man, like think beyond the next 5 years of your life when you think for your long career, you could really establish yourself as a thought leader and, and do all sorts of cool, amazing things. And instead you've burned an entire community so that you could make a few $1 million as a 20-year-old. And it just was one of these things where I was like, this is a case study, in my opinion, of what not to do for career longevity. Now, I don't know. I think he stalks, or I think we know who he is in real life, but I don't know if this will like follow him other places. But that was always sort of my almost takeaway from the whole Pudgy Penguin story, was like that, and to all young people, like don't be like that. But it is really interesting now to see this comeback and to see them really leaning in, I think, to like their IP, which has always been their strength, is they have these cute characters. And I've also seen Pudgy Penguins of the last X number of months as sort of an optimistic tale potentially for Cool Cats, who did not flame out in a dramatic fashion like Pudgy Penguins, but obviously had this sort of just like slow anticlimactic decline. And I think part of that is because they really got away from what people originally loved with them, which is just this beauty, like this IP and the art and the characters, which is exactly what Pudgy Penguins' strength is. So will be interesting to see if Cool Cats sort of starts leaning back into their IP as Pudgy Penguins sort of has. But credit to this new team, and congratulations to them certainly for pulling this off. And I agree. Now that you have new ownership in there, I'm like rooting for the comeback.
Yeah, I'm tempted to pick one up. It's dipped a bit, and I've seen some like images of I think like merch. They're getting like soft toys created, and like you said, like they're really leaning into that IP side of things with their cute images, and yeah.
Okay, speaking of comebacks, I don't want to harp on this for too long, but MoviePass is back. Do you know what MoviePass is, Zeneca?
I have no idea. I saw this on the list of the document, and I'm guessing it's an American membership thing to view movies at the cinemas or something like that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So MoviePass became this like phenomenon, I don't know, 5 years ago or so. It had started in like 2011, but it got really big like 5 years ago, and I'll give a little bit of history as to why. But essentially it got big because you could pay $9.99 a month and go to one movie in a movie theater every day.
What?
It costs like $17 for a ticket to a movie in America, probably more at this point. I don't know, because I don't really go to movies theaters that often anymore, like most people. Like we just don't go. And so for $9.99 a month to get to go to like however many movies, it was crazy. Like I said, this is a company that had started, I think, back in like 2011, and initially it was like $50 a month, which was obviously economically made a little bit more sense. But it wasn't popular because I think people just didn't want to spend $50 a month because they didn't necessarily know if they were going to end up using it or go to the movies that often, whatever. But $10 was that price point at which it was like, okay, this is a no-brainer. So the company was founded by this guy, Stacy Spikes. And then a private equity firm came in and bought up some big chunk of the company. And that's when they made this move to drop it down to like $10 a month or whatever to get all of this energy around it. But of course, that math in the end didn't math. And so the company folded. Stacy Spikes has now come back and repurchased the company essentially that has just like languished for years, and sent out this very sassy email that I kind of loved. I first realized this because I got an email because I was on the MoviePass subscriber list, I guess. So I get this email from MoviePass like out of the blue being like, we're coming back, and it's Stacy Spikes being like, like a brief history, it got bought by the private equity firm who ruined it and like ran it into the ground. And so I brought it back. Like, clearly he's a little bitter about how things played out. And there's this long Time article really detailing the history. I'll link to it in the show notes. And it's a fascinating story. I just am always curious about the inner machinations of successful, or even maybe more so like unsuccessful businesses like WeWork or Theranos. Like I love kind of tracking those sagas. And MoviePass, in its own very different way, is sort of one of those stories. But so what we're hearing, so it's going to be relaunched this summer, or very soon. It sounds like, oh, this morning actually, I think you could get on the I missed it. Dang, you could get on the wait list to basically get like the first MoviePass, and if you get on the wait list, you can invite like 10 people to join, and that's the only way to get on the list. So they're doing this like scarcity model of like very limited number of users for it. They've implied it's going to cost more than $10 now moving forward. But there's much more appetite for it, it seems, from like movie theaters, potentially because of what COVID did to everything. This model suddenly makes more sense to movie theaters who are really struggling. Though other theaters have sort of said, we don't want anything to do with this. So a little bit unclear on all that front. However, what I want to call everyone's attention to is it seems there may be like a blockchain piece to this as they try to figure out how to monetize. The model seems to be, okay, we might lose money on we'll have people pay the subscription, but we'll still probably lose money buying tickets from movie theaters and giving them to people who pay the subscription. But if we have enough users and we have their attention through our app, can we monetize in other ways? For example, have it basically pay to engage, like paying you to watch ads through the app, right? Paying you to watch movie trailers through the app. I don't know, things along those lines. And so I'll read a little sentence here. To that end, Spikes will try to build a subscriber base quickly with several changes from its original incarnation, including tiered pricing options and in-app credits that customers can earn by watching ads. They will be able to apply these credits towards tickets for friends and family members who don't subscribe to MoviePass. And eventually, Spikes says, users will be able to trade credits among themselves via blockchain technology. So as I was reading this whole Time article and sort of his new vision, all along I was like, it feels like there's like an NFT blockchain thing here going on. And then, many paragraphs down in the story, they finally got to that. So putting on people's radars, because I think this is an interesting story. Stacey Spikes seems like an interesting guy. And there may be a blockchain tie-in.
That's super cool.
So that's the other comeback. I'm more excited about, this was my Twitter poll. Are you more excited about the Pudgy Penguins or the MoviePass comeback? I think in some ways MoviePass, because I would like to take part in this new incarnation of it, though I missed the window this morning, so we'll have to see if there's any waitlist spots left.
No, I think it's right to be more excited about it. I'm more excited about it too, because to me it's doing what we all hope to do, and that's like bridge Web3 and the real world, and find a way to bring utility into real people's lives and add value and reward people for just being part of a ecosystem. And if they can do it, and it sounds like they have a massive network, and they're a household name in America, at least it seems like, or at least a lot of people know what they are. They have that capacity to potentially bridge that gap, which is very exciting.
Yeah. Yep. I totally agree. So we'll see. Fingers crossed. Okay. Tokenproof announced that Proof is going to be their first partner for their like online token gating. We all know Tokenproof as the token gate, like IRL token gate company. If you went to Ape Fest, you use Tokenproof technology. Tokenproof is a no-brainer of a company to me, solving a clear problem, which is we all connect our wallets to all these things and then we get scammed. This is like a one-stop shop. You connect your wallet to Tokenproof. They then have access to like look into your wallet and confirm for, third parties. Yes, Carly has an Ape token in there at this moment. So yes, she's entitled to XYZ. And they're basically looking to bring that model to digital communities. So like you can get a role in Discord via Tokenproof without having to like additionally connect your wallet somewhere. No brainer.
I think, they're doing just tremendous things in this space. They did it in real life, and now they're going online. It's a problem that has needed solving for a long time now, and I'm surprised it hasn't been solved yet, or it hasn't. Maybe it has, but it just didn't gain mainstream attention or adoption. But Tokenproof is a household name in the space now, and they partnered. They did Ape Fest, like they partnered with NFT NYC. They were like, every event was Tokenproof gated, basically, if it was a token gated event, and so everyone knows who they are. And it should hopefully solve the issue of people, signing it, like go into a website to like if you claim with a wallet that has your ape in it or your proof pass or whatever, then you run the risk of, signing a malicious transaction, going to the wrong website, clicking the wrong link. But if you no longer have to sign a transaction in MetaMask, then, and it's just like, I think they're using QR codes and some interesting hybrid of technology, then it should stop a lot of people losing assets. So it's awesome.
I interviewed Fonz, who's the founder of Tokenproof, and it was like one of the harder interviews because I was just like, yes, no, good. Glad you're doing that. Yeah, good. I think you interviewed him too, and I
did
was
as well.
Like,
I was just nodding along, going, "Yeah,
yeah,
okay,
exactly."
cool.
I'm like, I don't. It's like I'm actually finding it hard to like really. I don't even know what to ask because you just explain it, and I'm like, yeah, that makes a shit ton of sense. We clearly need that.
Just keep going.
Interview over, just say whatever you want. So, and then speaking of proof, we had the Proof Grails 2 drop. Give us the spiel on this.
Yeah,
Zeneca.
this is
it
very
seems
exciting
like it's,
to me.
Yeah.
So Grails, to give a perspective, is something that Proof did for the first time, I think, at the start of this year, January, February, maybe. So it was like shortly after they launched, it was their first sort of thing that they did. And the concept is that they got together 20 artists, very high profile artists in the space, for the most part. Actually, a handful of them were like just big names in various industries who had never actually released NFTs before. Got them to create a piece of art and then showed each piece to the community. And everyone who had a proof pass could mint one piece per pass. And you didn't know who the artists were in advance. You didn't even know, so you didn't know which artist created which piece, but you didn't even know which artists were involved with the project. And it was very hush-hush. And all you could do is base it on the actual art. And it was really, I wasn't around for Grails 1, but Grails 2 is happening now. But it's just a wonderful thing to see where people are looking at the art, seeing what they like, and buying based on that. Plus, there's this really interesting detective sleuthing event that happens where people are really analyzing, breaking things apart, disseminating the layers. They'll troll through years of history of deleted tweets from accounts, be like, did someone tweet an image that looks like this one? Is this their work? And at the end, after everyone has chosen which one they want, there's a reveal process, and then there's obviously additional secondary market activity after people find out who is behind each piece. And so, to give some perspective, in the first Grails, there was Tyler Hobbs, Dmitry Cherniak, Gary V, Tim Ferriss. It's just Hackatal. There's so many big names, and Grails 2 is now, there was Lava Labs did a piece as well. It was a prototype for the Autoglyph project, which is the first on-chain generative art. And it's some of them sold for 85 ETH, and Proof members could mint these for 0.05 ETH.
Yeah, I think this is Proof getting back to what Proof does best in many ways, which is this appreciation for art, the emphasis being on art, and really a community in many ways around community, but also around art. And Kevin leveraging his badass connections.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Which they can pull this off in a way that many other people couldn't, just because of Kevin's reputation and his years of building and partnering with people. So I think it's awesome, and I'm excited to see the kind of reveals as they come out.
Yeah, it's super exciting. So Grails 2 is this time there's 25 artists, and they actually they did it a little differently, where they airdropped a mint pass to everyone, and then you could use that mint pass to sell or to claim a piece. And so one went to everyone who had a proof pass, but also anyone who had a Moonbird with a Grails trait got one airdropped as well. And they were trading for between 3 to 4 ETH for the most part, and so that was the price to mint one of these is about 1,000, 1,100 in total. And it's just so much fun. The reveal is actually today, so everyone has minted their passes. Some got minted 130, 140 times. Some only got minted 17 times. And we're going to get to find out who is who. Some are known already. One is very obviously Grant Yun. One, it seems very likely to be Rafiq Anadol. I think Drifter Shoots is in there, and but then there's also it could be anyone, because you had Tim Ferriss in there, you had people who are maybe not traditionally known for releasing art. And the other really cool thing is that a lot of the artists will get involved and intentionally try and hide their piece and not make it obvious. So the greatest example of this is in the first collection, Dmitry Cherniak, fantastic generative artist. He did Ringers and is known for being a generative. He submitted a photograph, and so no one knew it was him. It was just like, he's still an artist, and so you can really play with it, and I think the artists love that.
Does it, not that it should be just about the money, of course, but like once it's revealed that it's Dmitry, but it's a photograph, where does the price point fall in the scheme of his works? Because his art blocks pieces go for, I feel like, a lot of ETH.
The floor of his Ringers is like 50 ETH. I'll look it up. I think it's still very highly valued. I think it was like 20 or 30 ETH for his photographs.
When you hear this, it does make it so absurd to think of like the backlash that Proof got over like fanny packs, where you're like, do you know how, if you were in either Proof Collective or even you got into Moonbirds, like I guess it's only if you have the Moonbird with the Grail
trait, but it's like, this is just an idea of one
there's
thing
so
that they've
much
done.
value being created, in this project. Like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Let's give them a break.
One more thing I'll say is, like, you mentioned how they're getting back to their roots about being about art and collectors, and I think they're leaning more and more into that, which I think makes a ton of sense. And
Totally.
I can't remember if it was Kevin or Justin who said, but there's a plan to sort of take the Grails collection and turn it into this a physical collection that travels around like galleries and museums and is presented in, like, again, because they have connections and the ability to make it happen. And like maybe you get a book that's like a Grails. It's just like they're trying to bridge the real world and the collectors in traditional art with NFTs and the collectors in this world. And I think that they're nailing it on that front. Like Grails it's spoken about in like the last week. Almost any Discord I'm in, there's been some discussion about it, and it's cool to see.
There is a brand new staking feature in the Ledger Live app today. We all like staking the assets that we're bullish on, and now you can stake 7 different coins inside the Ledger Live app. Cosmos, Polkadot, Tron, Algorand, Tezos, Solana, and of course Ethereum. With Ledger Live, you can take money from your bank account, buy your most bullish crypto asset, and stake that asset to its network, all inside the Ledger Live app. Through a partnership with Figment, Ledger also lets you choose which validator you want to stake your assets with. And Ledger is running its own validating nodes, offering a convenient way to participate in network validation, and it even comes with slashing insurance. Ledger Live is truly becoming the battle station for the bankless world, so go download Ledger Live. If you have a Ledger already, you probably already have it, and get started securely staking your crypto assets. COINSHIFT is a leading treasury management and infrastructure platform for DAOs and crypto businesses who need to manage their treasury operations. Every crypto org needs to manage their treasury, and COINSHIFT offers a simple, flexible, and efficient multi-chain treasury management platform built on top of the extremely secure Gnosis Safe. With COINSHIFT, your organization can go from primitive single-chain treasuries to expressive, flexible, multi-chain features such as global user management, global contracts, proposal management, and many other features that can be shared across an entire organization. COINSHIFT layers on powerful treasury management tools on top of the proven security of Gnosis Safe, allowing users to save time and reduce operational burdens and gas costs. COINSHIFT even has data tools like account reporting across the 7 chains on which it operates. Used by industry powerhouses such as Uniswap Grants, Balancer, Consensus, and Messari, COINSHIFT is speeding up the coordination and efficiency of the organizations that use it. In DeFi, you have to keep up with the frontier, and COINSHIFT makes that easy. So sign up at coinshift.xyz/bankless.
Well, speaking of cool people in the space, 6529 announced his like entirely on-chain like NFT metaverse course, university. Yeah. Are you a speaker?
I'm not a speaker, but there's some incredible speakers lined up, like just insane.
Incredible speakers lined up. I'm excited about what 6529 is doing. I haven't fully tracked all of it. I got one of his NFTs. He did these the free one, but I think I paid for them. So maybe it was after they were free and I bought it on OpenSea.
Maybe, or maybe you just paid for something that was free.
Or wait, I?
Wait. Well,
maybe I paid gas. I definitely paid something.
Maybe gas. Yeah, you shouldn't have paid much.
I definitely didn't pay a lot, but it's like the what's the it's all it like plays on like Soviet tropes. I feel like, right?
The red
it's
background looking one.
Yeah, it looks kind of Soviet. What? Well, see, this is. I'm clearly not prepared enough for this podcast episode. Oh, and now it's MetaMask wants me to sign in. I was going to look on OpenSea. Like, see, it's not like sees the memes of production, though. Maybe it is. Does it say that? It says like sees the memes of production.
Fall 2022 block, BLOC 711. Is that? Oh, you're talking about his. Oh, that's a different collection. So he has another collection called the memes or sees the memes where he's been releasing. Yeah, those ones are definitely paid and different.
Okay.
Like, there's one which is like a GM
I feel better.
Yeah. No, those are a different thing. And I don't know what the interplay or the relationship is, but over the last couple of months, I think he's been releasing these memes. Since day one, he's been all about memes, the power of memes. One of his greatest threads was on memes, I'm pretty sure. And memes and like an open metaverse are the two things I think. And writing fantastic threads is and collecting great. He's just what a wonderful account.
Totally.
Yeah. But yeah, memes is something that's so powerful. And so there is that collection, but there's a separate collection, which is basically access to this online university course thing. It's free for anyone. You go to the website, free mint, and unlimited. It's open edition. And I think it's open for like a month or something like that.
Okay, well, I'll have to check that out. This is what I was saying. I haven't like followed his every move per se, but obviously like love the open metaverse, diatribes he goes on and like being a part of anything he's doing. So I think I grabbed like 2 of his sees the memes, there was like 3 pieces that he sold there and I bought 2 of them. There was some backlash. Betty, obviously rightfully pointed out that when they went out with the initial announcement about this course, this on-chain like NFT metaverse crypto course, it was like 30 dudes. And I think Claire Silver was like the only woman listed as being a part of it. Or there's like 1 woman for 30 dudes. And Betty was like, come on, man, do better. And E6529 was like, oh, we haven't finished announcing everybody, that was an obvious gap or whatever. And it's like, it's a tough one. I'm like, maybe should you just wait and not announce if it's that, if the ratios are that kind of distorted and, anyhow, I know they're going to rectify it and make sure that there's diversity on that kind of end panel. But it was a little bit of a odd look. It was just so out of whack. Like we're used to it in this space, but 30 to 1 was not a good, was not the best look. Okay, the IRS. There's this new bill that was passed. I guess it's the Inflation Reduction Act. I think it's in that, and the IRS is adding 87,000 new IRS agents, or they're going to try to add 87,000. So crazy. I mean, it's so many, I mean, maybe it's a good thing, but, and the Biden administration was saying, hey, we're not trying to go after like middle class. We're not trying to use these agents because these agents are going to audit people. And they're like, we don't want to go after like middle class people. We're trying to go after, whatever, big whales, so to speak, to port a term from NFT world. And so Republicans tried to insert into this bill like that part of it was that they couldn't be used to go after people or businesses that are making under $400,000 a year. Democrats rejected that addition. So that's kind of freaking people out that they're going to start targeting kind of mid to small size businesses. If you're making less than $400,000 a year as a business, that's not so big relative to all these other players. I listen to the All In podcast and those guys who are all very, very rich are like, it's hard to imagine, like Chamath, who's a billionaire, was like, I literally use a top 5 whatever accounting firm that like Fortune 500 companies use for my own tax returns because effectively when you're this rich, like it's very complicated. And I get audited every year just as a matter of principle. Like nobody who's, worth this much money is not currently getting audited. So these 87,000 new agents are going to be going after, like the only people left to go after are kind of smaller fish. I don't know if that's entirely true, whatever, but where I'm going with all of this is like, it seems very, very likely that they're going to want to target crypto people in particular because there's no tremendous love for crypto folks, on Capitol Hill. And there's a feeling that there's a lot of like tax evasion happening. And so if you are in the crypto business, I would say make sure your taxes are real tight this year because it does seem entirely likely that there's a lot of audits being run on crypto companies.
I just reminded me, I literally had a dream last night. Maybe it was a nightmare where I was getting
audited.
Or just going through some annoying tax thing, or I'd forgotten something, or it was not fun. So yeah. And yeah,
it makes me nervous because it is so, it's just such uncharted territory. I did my very best last year to be as sort of scrupulous about all of it as I possibly could be. but is it possible that like I messed something up? Like for
Yeah.
sure. Like, it's crazy. Like this
It's
whole
so
thing, like
crazy.
what's the cost basis of the ETH I used to buy this NFT? Because it might be at the time my cost basis was probably different than my cost basis ended up. Like it's impossible to fully navigate. And so anyway, just flagging that. And on a similar note, I think around just like governments, and I haven't talked yet about the Tornado Cash situation here on this podcast. I think Bankless has done a lot on it. And so they really have it covered from like, if you want an overview, if you want updates on what's happening in that situation. But it's funny because Bankless did a piece and they mentioned that they were making, I think, a very strong point, which is banks get used for money laundering all of the time. Banks are used for nefarious purposes all the time. We don't shut down the banks or, frankly, even arrest bankers, historically speaking, even when money laundering is found to be running through a bank. And yet we're arresting this developer seemingly simply because he wrote code that was used for nefarious purposes. And what a double standard that is. But it's interesting because one of the historical like bank frauds that Bankless called out was with Danske Bank. It's a bank in Denmark, and $230 billion was laundered through Danske Bank of like dirty, primarily Russian money. And I was like, why do I know the name Danske Bank? And I don't think anybody was arrested, or maybe I don't think anybody was arrested in that case. There were a couple of these bank money laundering cases where somebody was arrested, but not sure that it was with Danske Bank. And I was listening this morning to an interview with Bill Browder. Do you know who Bill Browder is?
No, I don't.
He wrote a book called Red Notice. He was at one point the largest foreign investor in Russia. He started investing in Russia shortly after they began privatizing in like 1994, after the Soviet Union fell. And he became the largest foreign investor in Russia and was ultimately driven out by Putin, and basically has become a massive human rights advocate because he had his lawyer ended up being killed in Russian prisons, essentially for working with him. And he started going after the assets of Russians. And it was really like it was his work that got like Danske Bank caught, quote unquote, for laundering Russian money. Cause he started going after the money of Russian oligarchs that was being laundered through the West, because so much of it was stolen. And so all of this just got me thinking about, with sort of my worlds colliding. I'm a big fan of Bill Browder and his book Red Notice, which everyone should go read. And I'm like, yes, crypto can be used for these nefarious purposes, but clearly so can banks. And the big difference is that crypto can also help like regular people get their money out, which we talk about, like you can, if you're in Ukraine, you can cross a border with your Ledger wallet and actually, in a way that you can't get your money out from the banks in Ukraine or whatever the case is. And that's not true of like the banking system. Like the banking system works for super, super ultra rich people who are doing nefarious things. It doesn't work for regular citizens who don't have the means and the lawyers and the XYZ in order to try and get their money out, even if what they're doing is good. And so as we talk about like, oh, crypto's used for this, crypto's used for that, it's like crypto can be used by anyone. The banking system basically works primarily for the super wealthy. And anyhow, wanted to make that point here as all these things are going down.
One thing I'll say on that is obviously it's terrible what's happening, and it seems that it's very much overreaching. A lot of people ask or say, well, Tornado Cash is only used for money laundering. What's a legitimate use case for the Tornado Cash? If you had nothing to hide, why would you use it? And Vitalik came out, actually, my other podcast co-host Jamie told me this. I didn't actually see it myself, but he said Vitalik came out and said, well, I'm a Russian citizen and I donated to the Ukraine army. I didn't want to do that through my public account, so I might have wanted to. I don't know if he did explicitly use Tornado Cash or not, but he's like, that is a very valid reason that someone might want to send money anonymously. And there's a lot of, there's
100%. That was exactly my thought this morning as I was having all these little pieces come together. This Bill Browder piece and the Danske Bank, money laundering is like innocent people being wrongfully accused of things or being seen as like on the wrong side of an authoritarian government is a huge reason somebody might want to use Tornado Cash. Now, Bankless has said that, analysis has been done and about 35% of Tornado Cash is uses were illegitimate or for illegal or nefarious means. I have no idea how you do that kind of analysis.
Yeah.
And I'm a little bit skeptical to trust any of it, but it does go to show. And David Hoffman has said he's used Tornado Cash before. I don't know if he's explicitly outlined the reasons behind it, but like clearly they were not to illegally launder money or because he didn't hack some bridge and then is trying to steal the money and get it out. So anyway, we'll keep covering it as it progresses. Maybe final topic here. I talked about this a little bit last week with Blake, but you and I haven't gotten a chance to speak about it. The zero royalty situation that really was ignited because SudoSwap dropped their royalties to zero for artists and creators. I know you've talked about this a bunch. I saw you interacting with 6529, I think, a little bit about it. Give us your take here.
I wrote so I don't know what was last week or the week before. Time is weird in this space, but on a Saturday, I like to take weekends off, and I was like, especially looking forward to this weekend off because it's been a long week, and I was like, all right, I'm going to unwind. And this whole thing started blowing up, and people started talking about creator royalties. I think Giancarlo, who has a fantastic YouTube channel, made a video on SudoSwap, and I watched that. And then I tweeted something about it, and it just continued to blow up. And then I spent the entire Saturday just like knee deep in Twitter threads and chatting to people. And then I was awake till about 8 a.m. writing. I made this newsletter article, and so good job me taking time off. But I was very into it for a few days, and it's still very much on my mind. It's a really fascinating area because, well, the crux of it comes down to, and this is something that's almost like a dirty little secret in the space that most people don't even know, is that royalties are not enforceable on chain on the smart contract level. They are just not. And so everyone thinks, well, the beauty of smart contracts is artists and creators can get royalties perpetually. And no, it's like there are mechanisms where that can work, but it's reliant on, and Beeple said it best, is the only way to enforce royalties is to have people want to pay royalties. And the way it works now is that marketplaces enforce them. So if you buy something on OpenSea, the creator of the collection goes into the OpenSea, sets their profile up, and says what the royalty is. OpenSea, during the sale transaction, takes that percentage out and then manually sends it out to each creator. Or maybe they've automated some of the process, but it's very much they have to agree and decide to take part in that process. And every other marketplace has sort of adopted. And actually, I think I read an open letter from a bunch of artists sent to Super Rare, I think in 2020 or maybe a little earlier, basically petitioning for a 10% artist royalty to be the industry standard. And it became the industry standard for artists, at least, to have a 10% royalty. And now we're seeing, with the introduction of Sudo, and there've always been people who will get around royalties. Like people will do over-the-counter trades. You'll use, if someone says, "I'll agree to send you 5 ETH," and you send me a Pudgy Penguin or whatever, you bypass royalties. You buy and sell the thing without anyone paying any royalties. It would happen on art blocks a lot, except it was usually done to bypass the OpenSea fee. So if two people came together and was like, I would like to buy this piece of art from you, they agree upon a price and then they trade it. For the most part, art blocks collectors, and I think high-end and one-on-one art collectors, they want to honor the royalties. So they'll say, well, we'll do our deal and then we will chat with the artist and send them the percentage that they're due because of the royalties that they had stipulated from the beginning. But eliminating the OpenSea from that equation. And recently, I think like 2 months ago, SudoSwap, which had previously been used as a website for just doing these OTC trades where people could go and trustlessly transfer one NFT for some ETH or one NFT for another NFT or a bundle of NFTs for, you could kind of do whatever you want, and there were no royalties involved with that. They came up with like their own marketplace where now people can basically, it's a little more complicated. They have like liquidity pools and stuff going on, but effectively you can buy and sell individual NFTs and there's zero creator royalties. There's no way for a creator to add them or implement them. They just do not honor them. The only fee is a 0.5% marketplace fee that SudoSwap takes. And then technically, as people create these liquidity pools, like the creator can set their own separate fee. And so an artist could create their own liquidity pool. It gets complicated, but then someone else could come in and undercut them. And it just seems like this race to zero for royalties on their front. And so that's sort of like what instigated this entire conversation and opened this can of worms up. And it's just such a fascinating topic. And I think that again, people said it best. In order to enforce royalties, people have to want to pay royalties. And I think for the most part, buyers and collectors of art and supporters of artists will want to continue paying royalties. And I think that that's something that we should very much encourage and continue this social contract. Someone else made a really good analogy where it's similar like tipping in the United States, where it's not,
yes,
not the
6529
law.
said this. I like this.
It's not the law, but it's it's a social contract. Most people do it. Occasionally someone doesn't, and that kind of sucks, but 99% of people do it. Society gets by. And I think that for royalties for artists, that is the case. I think when you get like these 10K collections, it gets trickier, where it's harder to get 10,000 people, especially when a lot are anonymous and a lot of people are not there to collect or support artists. They're just there to make money. Then there'll be a race to the bottom, and it's a whole thing.
I do think this is where the thing working in our favor, our being the people who are really in support of royalties, is enforcement by the buyer, because they want the project to succeed. So if you're buying into a project, inherently you have some skin in the game in that project, and you should want the creators to get paid because presumably they're putting that money back into the project at some level to make it better. And so I think that's where the incentive is aligned. It's not for the seller, right? Who's presumably exiting the project.
Yeah.
Unless they hold others of it, whatever. There's obviously caveats, but it's the buyer who should want this to be enforced, and should want, even if that means they have to pay a little bit of a premium. Either you love the art or you love the project, and so you want to support it for that reason, or you're in it just for speculative reasons, and then you could actually make a strong argument that sure, pay a slight premium because it'll help the project succeed. I also think there are these mechanisms we could potentially explore, and I think I said this last week, that at least get us a little closer. Like you could, I've heard a couple ideas floating around. One would be to have some sort of list that can be continually added to of marketplaces that support creator royalties, that future smart contracts for projects could check. Right? You could have a call function. You get some sort of function in the smart contract that checks this centralized list. And if you're trying to list the asset on one of these non-pre-approved marketplaces, you actually can't even list the asset. So, but that's messy and uncomfortable. And who's keeping that list? And it's a little bit of like applying centralization to a space that we're trying to keep decentralized. I'm also curious if there are ways that the smart contract could read code in the marketplaces to see that there's a function that's enforcing royalties. I don't know. There's a lot of ways around that too, because you could have another function later on somewhere in the contract, in the marketplace code, that undermines it. Like there's, to your point, there's no sort of perfect solution, because we really can't just like the smart contract alone can't do this. Which is a shame. But
I think I've heard there's actually a proposal put together by Mitchell Chan, who's a generative artist and a great writer in the space, for that exact idea about like building a protocol into smart contracts that allow the creators to, put marketplaces on a ban list or an allow list. And it can get messy with the centralization aspect. It'll be a cat and mouse game where a new marketplace will pop up, but it's a lot cheaper to add a contract address that can't be traded to a contract than it is to deploy a bunch of contracts for a marketplace. Like, it's expensive and all that kind of stuff. So that's one option. Another option I've heard, which I think also makes some sense, is tracking the NFTs on an individual level, where potentially there can be some indicator where the project can know, or the smart contract can know, if a NFT was traded and royalties were paid or not. And if not, then that specific NFT doesn't have the same utility as the rest. Because at the end of the day, if you're buying an NFT to get access to a Discord, to get access to live events, to participate in a roadmap thing, but you're not paying royalties when you purchase it, then maybe you shouldn't have the same level of access that everyone else has had who has paid royalties up until now, or is paying royalties. And that's interesting. I don't know how technically feasible it is, but I think it's something I would like to see explored more. At the end of the day, though, to me, it comes down to the terms and conditions of the sale of the NFT. And it's like, are people agreeing to pay royalties when they buy the NFT at mint or on the secondary market? And some projects have gone as far as to include that. I know Artifact did, and VFriends have in their terms and conditions. They say part of the terms, you agree that if and when you sell, a percentage of royalties comes back to the company. Obviously, enforcing that is another thing, but if you at least put it there, then people can and should know that that's what they're buying into and agree to that. And when they go to sell, well, they're potentially breaking it. If they're going to buy, then they're breaking it. And then you can sort of have these repercussions and have some sort of justification for it. At the end of the day, it is a bit centralized again, but all these projects have a level of centralization to them anyway.
Yeah, I don't want to say I'm not worried about it right now, but I worry less about it in this, especially this bear market, where anybody who's still here is like really tracking what's going on, right? And we're in this kind of insular community where people can check, oh, is there a royalty set here? It's the mainstreaming of all of this that that makes me nervous. Like, again, we're trying to take barriers away from people engaging in this, not add barriers to it. And I worry about the person who just doesn't know anything, who buys something with royalty free, not even being aware of it, and then being cut out of utility and being like, well, screw NFTs. Like, this sucks. Like, how was I supposed to know that? I think all of this stuff does. I'm optimistic, that we'll figure this out. But I do. And if there are some sales that go through without royalties, I think that's okay. I think it's about how do we make it so that 90% or 95%, like the vast majority, it's deeply inconvenient basically to try and pull off a non-royalty trade. I think that's what we have to do, because we're not going to make it impossible. But if you make it deeply inconvenient, you ensure that the majority of people will be trading with royalties. And I think we can get to that deeply inconvenient place as this goes mainstream.
I think so too. I have a couple more thoughts. One on the mainstream side of things, and I totally agree. Well, so many artists specifically, they're drawn to the space by the idea of royalties, and I've had so many conversations over the last few weeks where I'm chatting to an artist and they didn't realize, and they're like, "Well, what are we doing here?" That's what I thought this was all about, and that's what this technology.
I totally get that. By the way, that was sort
100%.
of. I've known that this wasn't enforceable on smart contracts for a long time, and I was a little jarred the first time I heard that. But it was one of those things you just kind of like put aside. You're like, I'm just not going to think about this because it's a little inconvenient, and I'm just going to put it over here and like kind of ignore it.
It's dirty little secret. I was actually watching a YouTube video a week or two ago, and it was mostly negative towards NFTs, but the creator was fairly neutral at the end of the day. It was like it was a level-headed approach where most NFTs are scams, worthless, but then the creator gave a few examples of things that interested him. I can't remember the specific projects, but I know generative art. He was a fan of generative art. It was a creator who had a rug on his wall behind him that was created by generative art many years before NFTs even existed. And so he said, yes, there are valid use cases. And then towards the end, he's like, and the best thing is there's creator royalties that are enforceable on this. And I was like, oh no, we're already having enough problems. The other thing I wanted to mention regarding royalties is for these 10K projects, I'm not so sure that it's the best business model and it aligns incentives in the best way. I'm fairly convinced it's not, because royalties as a business model incentivizes churn, turnover, volume trading. You like when people sell your NFTs. That's when you make money, and it just doesn't really work to me like a long term. There's this massive mismatch of alignment in incentives. You should want people to hold. But then it's like, how do you generate revenue? And then it's, there's various additional options. And then we get back to like subscription models or selling more NFTs or higher initial mint price with zero royalties and looking for alternative revenue models as the business. And I think at the end of the day, that's one of the most important things. Like if as an NFT project, your business model relies on people buying and selling NFTs or tokens and like buying more tokens that you release, trading them on the secondary market, I think eventually you're just going to run out of steam. And that's why finding additional ways to generate revenue as a business is something I think is extraordinarily important.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. All that was coming to mind as you're speaking is like Elon Musk. Like imagine if Elon Musk got even richer based on volume, like it encourages a certain kind of like crazy Twitter behavior. Like I love Elon, but obviously his Twitter behavior can at times leave something to be desired. But like that's essentially what's incentivized, because he'll just like, pump the market, dump the market. Like it creates a lot of volatility. And when you profit off volatility, that's a strange incentive to have. Yeah.
I'm certain different projects will have different levels of like nefariousness with relation to this, but like you've seen it happen where a project will potentially make an announcement that will tank their floor price, or in the short term cause a panic and FUD, and then a week later be like, announce something massive that's amazing and tremendous. And we've actually kind of seen it happen with Proof. Now, I don't for a second.
I was just thinking that. I don't think they were intentionally doing that.
But it's an interesting byproduct where they've had a series of bad announcements where there's a flurry of trading, and then they got a bunch of money. And then they did the future proof announcement, and then the Grails, and then future proof coming next week that, you know, prices are going up and there's more trading, and it's just like that churn is benefiting them. Again, I don't think, I'm almost certain it wasn't intentional, but for other projects, I'm sure that especially the rug pulls, you see it all the time where they'll tease the community with announcements and string people along and just like trying to extract every last bit of ETH from the dry stone, and it sucks. And I think that it works because of royalties. And
Yep. Very interesting. All right. Well, I think that's time. That's our show. I do want to leave because we didn't leave with this because we didn't like fully get into it. I mentioned I started a newsletter. I launched a newsletter. Zeneca, you've been very supportive. I appreciate it. I have an article coming out today, probably Thursday, August 25th. So by the time you listen to this, it should be out. I've been seeing a lot of chatter on Twitter, and this was really happening, I feel like, around some of the licensing and rights conversations that happened because of CC0, but saying like, does Yuga Labs, basically saying that Yuga Labs never actually had copyright over Bored Ape Yacht Club. People are saying that's why Yuga Labs is suing Ryder for trademark infringement instead of copyright infringement. You have the CryptoFunks saying Larva Labs never had a copyright over Punks, and that's why CryptoFunks wasn't actually taken down, or the DMCA quote unquote didn't work for OpenSea, which there's actually other reasons none of this I think is entirely accurate. But I do a piece really breaking down what the argument is there, why people are saying that they may not have had the copyright, and kind of getting into that. So we'll link to it. Go check it out.
Awesome.
And that's our show. Thank you as always, Zeneca.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
See you next time. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Overpriced JPEGs. If you liked this conversation, if you liked this episode, please go ahead and hit subscribe. It helps me out, it helps the show out, and it means you will get alerts and updates when we post new content. Thanks again.